Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I am going to be doing a friendiversary double challenge. So let me explain. One of my very dear friends and me love to do some type of celebration every time our little friendship anniversary comes up. My lovely friend that I'm talking about is Bree. Her and I have been pretty much besties since I joined the AuthorTube community in 2020. This marks our 4-year friend anniversary. We decided we wanted to do a double challenge, meaning we are going to be buddy reading a book and we are going to be writing a short story. The book that we're going to be buddy reading is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This was on my TBR for May. I did not get to it in May, but this was for this challenge. I've never read Red Queen before, so it should be interesting. And for the writing portion of this video, we are going to be writing a short story, exchanging it with each other, revising it, sending it back, and then hopefully at the end of June, we are going to be submitting it to a magazine publisher. The magazine that we are going to be using and the prompt that we are going to be using, Havok's prompt, which is Remember September. I feel like this challenge is going to be really fun and really challenging in a bunch of different ways, but I'll talk a little bit more about my writing challenge throughout the video, but I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking so we can go ahead and get into the rest of it. But that's what you can expect from this video, a little bit of reading and a little bit of writing. Pardon the look. It is cleaning day today. I have been listening to the audiobook for Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard for the last 45 minutes to an hour, I think. I am about 30% of the way through this book, and I'll be totally honest, it is not my favorite. I am really struggling with this, and I don't know what it is. I really don't think it's the audiobook narrator that I'm struggling with, like the voice of the narrator or anything. I think it's the way it's written. I'm just really having a hard time with it, and I've had to restart the audiobook a couple of times because I'm hearing it but it's not sticking, you know? So I'm having a hard time with this audiobook, which kind of sucks because Bree and I were really excited to read this book for our double friendiversary. I'm gonna be struggling through this book, I can already tell. I started out trying to read this book in tandem. I have the library book over there, and so I was following along with the audiobook with the library book. I just couldn't. I figured I had some other stuff I had to do around the house, and I was like, maybe I just need to keep powering through and let me just get some other stuff done while I try to fumble through this book. So I've been cleaning and listening to this book. I don't really have an update other than just I feel like I'm struggling. So it's YA, and I have a feeling it feels a little juvenile for me, and I think that's the problem. I think I'm just struggling with the writing style, being inside this main character's head, because I wasn't immediately grabbed to this main character, and I think that's the problem, is I just feel like I'm stumbling through because I'm just not jiving with the main character. We'll see what happens, but I just wanted to give you guys an update on the reading portion of this double challenge, and hopefully when I get to the writing portion of this vlog, it will be a little more exciting and a little more upbeat and fun and exciting, because right now I'm not feeling it. I am not feeling it, and I'm so nervous, but I am going to clean a little bit more and listen to a little bit more of the audiobook and probably give you an update later. Wish me luck, send me positive vibes, and here we go. So I have exciting news to share with you guys. I am really excited to get to talk to you guys about this part. So Bree has already sent me her short story. I opened it, I briefly kind of like skimmed through it, and then I quickly remembered, wait. I'm doing a vlog. I need to back it up just a little bit and talk to you guys about this process. While I am not going to be sharing any of Bree's information, nothing about her short story, that is not my business to tell, I can talk to you guys about my editing process, about how I give critiques and how I am critiquing Bree's manuscript. She sent me her short story for Havok. She's doing Remember September. I'm not going to be able to do Remember September, which is due at the end of June for some personal reasons. I put that in another video. I think it was the video before this. You can check that out if you want to know some of the reasons why. I am pushing my deadline back to July. But anyways, this update is about Bree. Bree sent me her short story, and I have read a good chunk of Bree's writing before. I have read a few short stories from her. I have read one manuscript and half of another manuscript of hers. I am very aware of Bree's writing, what she writes about typically. I would say that this time with her writing, it's the first time she is kind of dabbling into something different. I'm not going to share what she's dabbling in is something different, but I have to say, I think it's really cute. What I like to do with my editing process of helping critique somebody else's writing, I usually like to read it, an entire manuscript or a short story, at least twice. So the first time I read it through, I like to just try and understand what the story is, what the author is trying to do, and how they're doing it. If I see anything when I read through the manuscript the first time, I'll just kind of note things, like if I really liked something or if I felt like something needed a little bit of clarification, I'll put notes in the document. And sometimes those notes are for myself because maybe I would have missed something. Like if I missed a foreshadowing, I want to make sure that the author did put that foreshadowing in there, and maybe I had just missed it on the first go around. With Bree, I have already done that first little quick read through. I put some notes in the document, and honestly, Bree is a fantastic writer. There is minimal work that I have to do for her draft. It's always good to get another pair of eyeballs looking at your stuff, or a minimum of another pair of eyeballs with experience looking at your stuff. Not saying I have experience, but it's always good to have another writer look at your stuff and give you some feedback. I do plan on reading Bree's story at least another time, for a total of 2 times. Excuse me. And then what I am going to do after those 2 times, I really want to focus on making sure Bree answered the who, what, when, where, why. Is this all within the world? Does this all make sense within the world? And then does it make sense for the prompt, which is Remember September? So I'm going to do my other read through of Bree's story and give her maybe a little bit more feedback. I don't know how much more I am going to share because I'm so scared to give spoilers of Bree's work, but I really just wanted to talk about my process of how I go through and I edit another writer's manuscript or another flash fiction piece. And I do want you guys to keep in mind that I'm not a professional. I write for fun. I read for fun. I am just here doing the best I can to make my friend's story better. While I'm all about supporting other authors, especially friends, I never want to give not honest feedback. I always want my friends to succeed. I think Bree is a fantastic writer, but if I find something that I don't understand in a story, I'm definitely going to ask her to clarify, because it's always important to give honest feedback, even if the writer is your friend. I would never want somebody to read my work and be like, oh, it's great, beautiful, lovely, publish it, or, you know, submit it in, and it needed multiple more rounds of edits. I need honesty, and that's what I do for my writing friends, and this is what I would do for writers if they ever had me read their work. Honest feedback, constructive feedback. This is what I would want as an author. I don't need you to sugarcoat it. I need the details. I need to know what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and the whys and the hows and the whos and all of that stuff in between. While I am giving Bree, my bestie, feedback feedback. The feedback is honest, it's genuine, and it's constructive, and it needs to be that way because that's the only way that Bree is going to grow as a writer. It's how Bree has grown as a writer because she's been given that honest feedback and that critical feedback to advance her writing. I'm not taking credit for Bree being this phenomenal of a writer. She has had fantastic feedback in the past that has helped her grow to this point. If you have never read any of Bree's work, you definitely should. She has written and published, I believe, 2 short stories. One is in the Stygian collection, the first volume. She might have one in the second volume that just came out too. I need to clarify with Bree, but I know she does have published work out in the field, which I'll leave linked down below. You definitely need to read her work. But I am going to get back to reading this short story and giving her feedback on this so she can continue to grow as a writer. But I did just also want to throw that disclaimer in there and throw in that you can still be a critique partner and you can still give your best friend quality feedback and her still be your best friend. You know, like I would never expect Bree to just give me bullshit feedback to say, oh, it's beautiful, it's lovely, hit publish. And it needed work. I expect that in return, and I give that to Bree, and I give that with anybody that I read their work. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now, but that is what I wanted to just mention. It's not too dark for you. It is absolutely pouring and extremely dark outside, so I'm doing my best with the natural lighting. So anyways, I finished Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and honestly I would say it is middle of the road for me, so I am giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I would say I was a little disappointed in it, and I really struggled to get through the writing in this story. I know the author from bits and pieces that I've gathered about this author. She wrote this story either in her late teens or early 20s. I think it was one of the first stories and first series she's ever written. It might be the first thing she's ever published. I can see that and I understand with the whole writing style, and just like the structure of the sentences was a little strange, and a little bit of the dialogue to me didn't really feel natural. There was a line in this story, and I'm not going to be quoting it exactly, so give me a little bit of grace with that. But it said something like there was a tingling sensation that started in my heart and went down to my toes. That was a little like weird for me, like a weird way to describe that feeling. At least to me personally, I felt like that was a little odd. And there were other little descriptions and other things like that that I just didn't jive with. Now, I think if I had read this story like 10 years ago in my late teens and early 20s, I don't think I would have had a huge issue with those types of things. And honestly, I think if I had read this story at that age, I would have loved this story. I would have really loved the love triangle in this story. I just had so many issues with it. Not only with the writing style, I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't really care for our main character. I know that the author was trying to make her a little bit snarky and a little like, you know, snippy and sassy, and all of that just fell flat for me. While I love a snarky, snappy, sassy female lead, it's got to be done well. And to me, I just didn't feel like it was done well. It just felt obnoxious to me. I was very annoyed with our main character. I didn't really care for our 2 love interests, which were the 2 brothers in this story. I liked Cal more than Maven. It was just hard to understand what was motivating these 2 characters. And without spoiling anything, the twist at the end of the story with one of the brothers, it kind of made sense, and I was able to understand a little bit of what was going on. His decisions, even though I had suspicions from the beginning as to what was happening and going on, I'm just trying to be as vague as possible while still trying to make my reasonings make sense for the rating I'm giving this story. Didn't really care for our main character. The two love interests, I think they were fine. And I do think that if I had read this story when I was younger, I would have eaten up both of those brothers. I do think they were interesting characters. I thought they were a little more fleshed out than our main character. With our main character and our main character's family, I really wish there was a little bit more development with that. While I felt like I could get behind our main character's relationship with her sister and her parents, because we actually saw that on paper before she got whisked away, I could get behind all of that a lot more than with the things that happened to her brother. When something happened to one of her brothers and it was something devastating that the family found out, I just had a hard time backing that or feeling any type of emotion as a reader. The relationship between our main character and this brother was just hearsay. I couldn't visualize it. Anything that was supposed to be like a shock or, you know, a devastating blow, anything that was trying to push you into feeling any sort of way or feeling about this story, to me it just didn't hit. I did not feel any of those heartaches or when we leapt for joy or anything like that. While I think the author had interesting ideas and fun ideas, this story wasn't for me. I think one of the things that just really confused me about this story is I thought I was going into a story that was more like medieval or, you know, like a typical fantasy story, and that is probably just on me not researching the story enough. So when there was a lot of technology, advancements in science and things like that, that kind of threw me off. Anytime electricity or light bulbs or something like televisions was brought up, that totally threw me out of the world again, because they were still like dressing in dresses, and I want to say they were living in castles and palaces. It was just such a weird dynamic for me. I felt like we couldn't choose. Were we trying to go for something more modern-ish, or were we trying to be fantasy, medieval, that typical type setting? It was in my mind very confusing, and maybe it was very well established at the beginning of this story what I was getting into, but I must have missed it. I must not have been listening or reading to catch anything like that in the story. The words that were used in this story, so towards the end they were traveling on this shuttle or this train going out to this radioactive wasteland type place. They were rattling off what it means for something to be radioactive. They mentioned something about a cancer-causing reagent, or it's so reactive it can cause cancer, which they're not wrong at all, because it does. But how do we know about cancer in this fantasy dystopian world? That just really threw me for a loop. That really just made me scratch my head. And there were a couple of other things that were in that same sentence, in that same scene, that made me be like, okay, are we in our world? I'm very confused here. I feel like if the author had those types of things, a radioactive area, or them knowing that enough radiation can cause cancer or certain illnesses and diseases and death, I think those things could have been renamed in this world. Because to me, something that's radioactive, that makes me think of our world. Or cancer causing, that makes me think of our world. I don't know if any of those explanations are making sense, and maybe I'm thinking too far into it, maybe I'm trying to be too technical, but that was just what I noticed about this book. And those were just some things that made it really difficult to back the story completely. Now I know with the age of the author and when she wrote this, I think that explains a lot of how I'm feeling. This is not going to make me never want to pick up this author again. I own the first book in the Realm Breaker trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. And I would like to read that story, especially since it's something that she's finished fairly recently. I think she just finished that series last year, or the third book came out pretty recently. That would be something I would read. I would just be interested to see how the author's writing has improved. With that being said, I won't be continuing this series. I don't want to, and I really struggled to finish this book. I had honestly gotten to the point with this story where I had to return the physical book to the library. I was able to get the ebook on Hoopla, and then I had the audiobook through Libby. I was to the point with this story where I really didn't want to sit down and read it. I was doing other things while I was reading this book. So take that into account. I may have missed some things may have been clarified, and I had divided attention between this story and folding laundry, cleaning the bathroom, and tidying up and things like that. Keep that in mind too, that I could have potentially have missed some things, but when I get to that point where I can't sit and enjoy a book and listen to it at the same time, that's kind of a clue for me that I'm just not jiving with a story. If I had not been reading this book for a buddy read for a double anniversary vlog with my bestie Bree, I would have DNF'd this. I am glad I did finish it though, because it's good to push through stories sometimes if you're not really jiving with something. That is the update with Red Queen. I will just keep going forward with the writing portion of this vlog. Watched my previous video, it was where I was giving you guys my update on life. You will know that the month of June has not been the best for me. I have really had a difficult time focusing. My original idea that I wanted to write for this short story, it revolved around a character having Alzheimer's. I'll be totally honest, I have had a series of events that have happened in my life that's a little too close to home with that topic. And while I feel like if it all wasn't so fresh and close to my heart, I could still write my short story. I have to put a pin in that story that I've been thinking about because I can't do it. So I talked to Bree. I just was not in the right mental headspace to write a short story and to write that specific short story and submit it for Remember September. I had to take a writing break just for a couple of weeks while everything got sorted out in June. I am now going to be doing Remember October, which if you know anything about Havok and you know how all of that goes, now my deadline is by the end of July. So instead of me submitting my short story with Bree for Remember September, I am just pushing my deadline back an entire month and going to submit it for Remember October. I am now coming up with a different idea. So I want to talk to you guys about how I brainstorm and come up with my short story ideas. I have an idea that our main character is trying to get from the land of the undead. She has something with her and she's trying to bring it back to her people or to like the land of the living. I'm stuck on a few things, like what is this thing? Why does she have this thing? I don't really know those who, what, when, where, and whys quite yet, but I have been, as you can see on the screen, I like to write out and brainstorm a little bit of my ideas before I go into a story. I do this with short stories and I do this with the novels I write too, where I try to give myself just bullet pointed ideas. With it being a short story and it's more of like flash fiction, I don't make these notes as super detailed, mainly because, you know, it's a short story. It's supposed to be the facts right out the gate, ASAP, try to give as much information as possible. That's what I am working on here in the background, just kind of jotting down some of those notes. But I am going to be spending the next little while trying to type up this story, try to revise it a couple of times before I send it off to Bree. I have no doubts that Bree is going to be able to give me some really solid feedback and to really help me amp up this story. Finished writing. Oh, you're crooked. Hello. I just finished writing the very, very, very rough first draft of this story. I like it. Not saying it's perfect by any means. There's a lot in here that I need to work on. I feel like right now it just seems a little bland. I need to change some things around that I had in here. I feel like there are some things in here that are a little repetitive. I might just keep them in there just to see what Bree will say when I send it to her. Maybe she won't feel the same way, maybe she will, but we'll see. I feel like there's something missing in this story and I can't quite figure out what it is. So I think I'm gonna like stare at this, try and rework some of the things, probably just go ahead and send it off to Bree because she is so good at picking up on like my thoughts and my feelings. If I feel like there's something wrong, I feel like she'll be able to pinpoint what it is I'm missing. I guess I should clarify this. While I've never shared any of my work with Bree before in this capacity, I have asked her for a little bit of feedback and critique for certain things, but I've never actually sent her a piece of my writing to have her read the whole thing, tell me it sucks, and then I have to rework it. She's never actually seen all of my writing in like beginning, middle, and end in this type of fashion. So hopefully I don't have her running for the hills when she sees my writing. When I send it to her, I might just send it with no comments, not to be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I was having issues writing this part. What would your suggestions be? Like, I definitely could do that, and I feel like maybe I should do that, but I almost want to see if these are going to be things that she's going to notice and immediately point out. I might just leave it up to her since it's flash fiction, you know, since it's going to be pretty short. It's not like it's an entire novel, 100,000 words, and I'm going to be like, try and pinpoint the issues. With it being less than 1,000 words, she'll be able to pick up on things like immediately. I think I'll just send it to her after I rework it a couple of times and see what she has to say. I will probably continue to work on this, and the next time we see each other will probably be after I get some feedback from Bree and I'm starting to rework everything, only because I don't think we need to have another update before then. I will continue to work on this and send it to Bree, and I'll let you guys know what she says. So it's a few days later and I have feedback from Bree. I am really excited to share some of the feedback that she gave me. I sent this to Bree over the weekend and she read it fairly quickly. She gave me about 18 comments in the margins. While I won't sit here and tell you all of the feedback that she gave me, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about the feedback she's given me and how I am implementing these changes. I had plans of working on this story yesterday, but I had a lot of personal things that happened yesterday and I wasn't able to work on this yesterday, so I had to cancel my plans today so I could work on this short story. But here we are working on the short story. I am so freaking excited. A few of the comments that Bree had mentioned, I told you guys that she has a knack for knowing what I mean and then helping give me some suggestions of how to fix these changes. Honestly, I feel like Bree is probably one of the best critique partners I could ever ask for. Bree gives you so much feedback and she gives you so much critique on things that is just taking the story to the next level. I have spent the last 3 hours going through all of Bree's feedback and I've already started a lot of these changes into the next draft of this short story. One of the things that Bree had mentioned is I always start my sentences saying either my character's name or saying he or she or her in the beginning of the sentence. So she was like, mix it up a little bit because you're always saying she did this or she did that or her name did this. So she gave me some feedback on that and told me how to kind of mix up my sentences a little bit, which I really do appreciate. I knew that this was an issue where I started the story, and I always feel like I do this, especially with my novels. I never start my stories where they need to start. I always feel like I am so sluggish with like the first half of a story that I never just like get to the meat and potatoes. Bree definitely called me out on it, and I'm so glad she did. She highlighted one part and she was like, this is where I want you to start the story. So I'm not gonna completely share what she said, but she basically said you should start your story here because it gives us the vibe of like, oh shit, this is happening. I took that into account while I'm reworking the story in the second draft or third draft or whatever. This is where I've started my story now. I knew Bree would know where I should have started this story. I was just having a heck of a time figuring out where exactly it should start. I knew she would know where I needed it to start. We changed the beginning of the story, like where it starts, so everything in the story is now like sliding up. A lot of things where she was saying like, this is super vague, you know, give me more details. Like, why are these people, why are these things chasing her? What did she do and for what purpose? This feedback is absolutely phenomenal. I wanted to give another one. It's all the way at the bottom. She did say about some of those parts that were repetitive. She did call me out on a lot of like those repetitive parts. I definitely need to make sure I axe those from the story, either completely get rid of it or like rework it a little bit. But honestly, I do think those things need to go. And that was something that Bree had mentioned. She was like, with writing flash fiction, every word and every single action needs to have a reason why it's in the story. I absolutely agree. I need to make sure that if she's doing certain things, doing certain actions, there's a purpose for it and it makes sense within the story. I need to rework a few of these other things in the story. I have rewritten this story. I have about 400 or 500 words, and I think I need about 250 more words to wrap up the story. One of the big changes I made with this story, this was Bree's suggestion, and I couldn't believe I didn't write the story like this to begin with. When I originally wrote this story, I wrote it in third person past tense. Bree suggested that I write this story in first person. I think that is absolutely brilliant. She thinks with this story, it being in first person, it will clear up some of the confusion or some of the whys and the feels of the story, because we're going to be feeling whatever the character is feeling, and it's going to make a lot more sense. And I couldn't agree more. I have rewritten most of this story. I mean, all of the story is going to be in first person now, but what I've written of this story, I have changed it to first person present tense, and I chose to do present tense because I think that makes a lot more sense for this story. And I can't believe I wrote this in third person to begin with. That was honestly a really stupid decision, but I think I'm just so used to writing my novels in third person that my mind just defaulted to writing in third person. Those were just a few of the things that Bree mentioned in her feedback. Honestly, it is some of the best feedback I think my writing needed. It's the critique that this story needs to take it to the next level. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be picked for this short story contest or anything, but I know it is growing me as a writer, and it's the feedback I needed to make this story better, because I knew there was so much that was missing of this story, and I just knew having a critique partner and sharing this with Bree, she would be able to steer me in the right direction. I am taking all of the changes that she is suggesting and trying to work it back into the story and then making it a lot stronger. I have been working really, really hard to amp up this draft. While I'm not finished with it, I'm going to keep working on it today, and hopefully I can get Bree a new draft of this story, read it one more time, see how I did with those changes, and go from there. Just wanted to give you guys, the update to say I sent it to Bree. She's still giving me some feedback. While I have some more developmental things I need to work through with this story, there's also some more structural things that I have to fix with it. I am going to spend the next couple of hours working on this short story and really, really trying to get all of Bree's critiques finished. And I don't know if I'm gonna have another chance to send this back to Bree, only because it's July 30th. The submission is August 2nd. However, I work the 1st and the 2nd of August. So really the only date I have is July 31st to submit this. Everything I do today, I need to make sure I get a lot of those changes done today. So then tomorrow I can do a couple more rounds of edits and then submit this short story. But all in all, this has been a really fun and really, really exciting experience. I have been writing a lot more consistently as of 2020, and I have yet to share my work, and honestly I regret it. If I hadn't been so scared to share my work, I feel like a lot of these issues that are being pointed out to me, I would have been able to understand those things more early on and gotten that feedback to fix a lot of these issues, like a lot of structural issues. And I think too, it also comes down to, I write a lot of first drafts, but I never go back and edit my work. I think that this is a great opportunity and this is a really solid stepping stone for my own writing process. With me writing my novel and going back into edits and working on a second draft of Project Ice, which is my high fantasy novel, taking a lot of what Bree is saying and trying to apply it to that novel, I think is absolutely crucial. That is all I'm going to say right now. I am going to work on this short story a little bit more and try to get it to the best that I can make it. I'm trying. I am here to close out the vlog, but also to say I submitted my short story to Havok. And I'll be totally honest, I've submitted this short story, but I do think it needed a smidge more work. I had sent the document to Bree. She gave me some feedback. I read through it a couple of times and made my own tweaks for my own reasons, and not necessarily going off of Bree's feedback, but things that I felt like I could improve with the story and some of the things that I think I needed to foreshadow a little bit more. I tweaked the story a little bit. Oh, if you hear beeping, my homemade bread just finished cooking, so I am going to have to go deal with that in just a second. I ran through it a few times. I did my best with formatting because, again, this is the first time I've submitted a short story to any magazine, anything to try and get something published. It was an experience. So if you want to hear more about my experience of doing all of this, if there was something I didn't cover in this video, let me know down below and I can make a video specific on those topics. Overall, I am really proud of this story. I feel like it was good. There's a few more changes that I can make to the story and make it great. If and when I get rejected by Havok, I still want to work on the story, tighten it up a little bit more, and then submit it out to other magazines and other places that do short stories. But at least I'll have that one short story that I know is ready to go, something that I really enjoy and something I'm really proud of. This story has changed so much. It evolved, but it is just so much better than it was when I first started. I cannot thank Bree enough for doing this collab with me, for celebrating our 4-year friendship anniversary with doing a short story challenge and doing a reading challenge. This has been so fun and I hope that you guys enjoyed this little collab. And if you did, definitely let me know down below what your favorite part in this video was. But if you're still here and you don't know what else to say, leave the little handwriting with a pen emoji down below in the comments. But thank you so much everyone for watching this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye.